Hey folks, it's Frithgar here, how you doing? Welcome back to Farming Simulator 19 here on Boulder Canyon. We have got a field with a load of weeds growing in it. And right at the end of the last episode last week, I asked if you thought that I should go and buy a weeder. And I had a few responses from it because we've now got an extra tractor. A lot of people thought that perhaps this was going to be a wee bit expensive and that we should go for this one, but we've got a number of tractors here, so maybe we could get more than one. Now, this one here actually requires 40 horsepower. We might be able to go on the electric tractor. People did say we should get 2 of them to go on 2 of the tractors, but we could go further than that. We could get 3 of them. We could actually get 3 of them. Now, we are on 5 times speed, and according to the rules of the series, we're not allowed to go to 1 time speed unless we are mowing grass or we are planting. We are doing neither. So, in theory, for this bit, we would not be allowed to slow time down in order to be able to do the weeding. So, we're not going to. We are not going to break our own rules just to try and fit this little bit in. That is currently 210. I'm going to just go and sell these bales straight away at 210 rather than going any higher than that, because I would like to get the money as quickly as possible. If that means that we're not going to be able to get all of the money that we might otherwise get, I'm going to have to do it like this though. Bring it to there. And then go like that, and then go like that. Right, there's 6 bales, 13,000. I'm going to go straight to the shop like this, and I'm going to buy 3 of these weeders. You got leveling board there for an extra 50. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go like this. So there's 1, buy, yes, okay. There's 2, buy, yes, okay. And there is 3. So we've got 3 weeders that I have now purchased. I'm just going to take this trailer around here as quickly as possible, and I need to get those loaded onto the truck and then brought back here as fast as ever we can, so we can get some of our tractors hooked onto them and underway. So we want to next go here like this, and I want that Hulk, and I want to reset it back to the shop. Okay, like that. And then we can go back here. No, I don't want to go to that one yet. I want to go to this one. And I want to use that to put these 3 weeders onto that trailer. I want to do this as quickly as I can. So I'm really hoping that our electric tractor can run the weeder. I mean, if it can't, it can't. That's fine. It doesn't really matter, because what we'll do instead is we will use one of our other tractors on it. We've got 3 other tractors that we can now use. So it's not like we have a shortage of vehicles that we can use to do this job. So if I put... Can I put that right... I'm going to put one of them back up on there like that. And then the other 2 will go down on the base, because I don't think there's quite enough room to put the 3 of them down on the base down there. So we'll hook that one on there like that. Bring it round. Back that one up on here. We got to get it back as quickly as we can, otherwise we're going to have a growth stage. And I mean, the growth stage itself is not the issue. The problem is going to be when we have a growth stage with the weeds, because this... Weeders don't take weeds out in the second stage of their growth cycle. You've got to get the crop either just after planting or in the first growth stage. And the weeds themselves have got to be in their first growth stage. You can't weed them out if they're in the second growth stage on the weeds. So we are very much up against the clock on this. Let's drop that one down there like that, and this tractor can go over here out of the way, and we can start getting back to the yard. It's not like we can go particularly fast either. We're going to have to go at a steady pace. So I'll go over and get that bit hooked up. We can't, yeah, we can't race, because otherwise we'll end up losing the load. And one of these 3 weeders will end up falling off, and that would not be a good thing. Right, I'm going to go like that, hook that one on. There we go. And then bring that back round. So I don't need to lengthen the board or anything like that. That will carry it just fine. But we've got to get back to the yard. I need to get back there as quickly as I can. Now, the usual way that we go up the hill is probably still the fastest and most efficient way. Because otherwise we've got to go up over that bridge, and that invariably causes problems. This is a more wiggly route, really. This does have a lot more twisting and turning, which I'm a little bit concerned about, considering the live load that we seem to have got here. They just all slid forward. That's not what we want. We don't want them sliding forward. I'm going to have to try to slow down a little bit, but I am very, very much aware that I'm up against the clock here. I don't know. We probably will be all right until tomorrow morning. We'll probably be okay, but I've got to get the weeding going, and we've only got limited time that we can weed as well. We are not supposed to work past 8 o'clock in the evening. We have disregarded that before now, and we have done some work later at night from time to time, but generally we do try to make sure we stick with the rule that we can't work past 8 o'clock in the evening. Some areas you're not allowed to work past 8 o'clock in the evening. There are some places, like I've worked on estates before now, and like all of the crops and everything, that was just, you know, surplus to requirement. That was just something to do to entertain the masses and make it look like the land was being used. The actual money from the estate came from the pheasant shoots. They would breed tens of thousands of young pheasant chicks every year and have them all over the estate, and then the people would come from London and pay an absolute fortune to just participate in a bloodbath and slaughter thousands of these pheasants every year. Now, you can probably tell from my tone what I think about that. I'm not against hunting. I've never been against hunting. What I am against, and have always been against, is the idea of the whole breeding 10,000 pheasants and sticking them in a really close, tight environment, and then having people pay ridiculous amounts of money to come along and just shoot the gun without any particular aim or whatsoever. There's so many pheasants flying overhead that you just got to fire randomly into the air and you're going to hit something. That's not sport, that's not hunting, that's just a bloodbath, and I disagree with that on, I really don't like that. I've never liked that. I've never been a fan of that kind of shooting in any way, shape or form. Hunting is different. Hunting requires a bit of skill. It requires you to stalk and find your prey, and bring it down. That is altogether different to a pheasant shoot, where you've got thousands of pheasants that have been bred. Now, I have actually participated in a pheasant shoot where the pheasants weren't bred, or not on a large scale anyway. I said they weren't bred. There were still pheasants that were bred for it, but it was done differently. There were maybe 50 to 100 pheasants released over 2,000 acres. So you didn't have it done on the scale that it is done on some of these estates. And you spend, like, you have, that pheasants don't naturally go flying into the air, so you've got to have a team of beaters. And I was one of the beaters. And you've got to go through the underbrush and with sticks, making a whole load of noise. So you've got 30-odd people there making a load of noise, getting these pheasants to try and fly into the air. And they don't naturally want to do it anyway. So it takes quite a bit of effort to get these things to fly up into the air, and then eventually they do, and someone will hopefully be able to take them down. That's the general idea, and that's usually what would happen. Right, I don't want that one. Trying to, yeah, that one. Reset, yes. Right, I'll leave the trailer where it is for a second. I'm going to get the electric tractor, though. I'm going to take this one over, and we're going to see if this one will operate a weeder. But yeah, and then you'll get a pheasant fly into the air, and then one of the people with the guns can bring the pheasant down. And you can spend all day doing this, and you end up with maybe 10 birds at the end of it. So Not even enough for one pheasant apiece. Now, that was... It actually was hunting. You know, it was a combined effort to go and hunt the animals. And the birds were then divided up between the people who wanted them, and were able to take them home for food. And yes, it wasn't done primarily for food. It was done as sport rather than food. But it was an altogether different experience to the bloodbath that I was describing, with thousands upon thousands of pheasants everywhere that just get absolutely slaughtered every year. So anyway, I've digressed. Back to the estate in question. The pheasants were the big money. They made 10 times every year from selling places on their bloodbath than they did from all of the crops on the estate. Work stopped on the estate at 8 p.m. sharp. There was absolutely no work done anywhere on the estate past 8 p.m. It didn't matter what stage you were at with crops. It didn't matter what the weather was doing. Work stopped at 8 p.m. If that meant that 200 acres of grain were lost because of rain, bad weather, anything like that, doesn't matter. Pheasants are more important. They are worth far more money than just 200 acres of grain. Plow it in, do whatever, we don't care. And it was like that the whole time. It did not matter in the slightest what happened. You did not, under any circumstances, ever work past 8 o'clock on that estate. And that is not quite what we've got going on here. Now, the whole reason I started on this little rant was because we're wanting to do some work here. We do sometimes work past 8 o'clock, but we don't have large pheasant shoots going on this estate. Where we have our farm right here, we have no large pheasant shoots. We have nothing like that going on. No, all we've got here is just pristine countryside all the way around us. So there's no real reason that we shouldn't work past 8 o'clock, other than maybe some kind of environmental protection order. There could be some such protection order. Working late in the evening could be disturbing some rare species of animals. That's entirely possible. There's all sorts of creatures that can be disturbed by tractors and machinery working later at night. So there could be an environmental protection order on the region that prohibits working past 8 o'clock at certain times of the year. I have heard of such things being done. It's not very common, but I have heard of it. So yeah, there are reasons that we may not be allowed to work past 8 o'clock. Has anybody in, where you live, has anybody had any reasons on a farm that you cannot work past a set time? I've heard plenty of times of not being allowed to work past a set point in a built-up area, but that's a built-up area. That's altogether different than having it set up so that you can't work past a set time out in the countryside. It's a different thing altogether, I feel. So, has anybody had in the country, not in a town, not in a built-up area, but has anybody had out in the countryside any reason that they've had to stop working every day at a set time for outside influences? And I don't mean sort of, we decided on our farm that we were going to stop working at 7 p.m. every evening if we could, because that's not an outside influence, that's an internal decision. Outside influence I'm talking about. Has anybody experienced outside influences that have caused them to all have to stop working at a set time in the evening, or not be allowed to start work before a set time in the mornings? I'd be very interested to know about this. I know that one place that I used to work, you weren't allowed to work past 10 o'clock because the people that lived nearby didn't like hearing the machines in the fields. And so it was originally 9 o'clock, but it was argued that, they're farmers, and at certain times of the year it needs to go later than that. So the harvest time when I was there, the compromise had been that the general time was moved to 8:30 rather than 9 o'clock, and then harvest time was 10 o'clock. So you weren't allowed to work past 10 o'clock because the rich people who had all of their houses near that area had decided that they wanted the peace and quiet of the countryside. They didn't want the countryside actually being farmed, which is, yeah. I know that several of you have had experience with that sort of thing. I've never quite understood the logic of wanting to move to the countryside for the peace and quiet and then getting upset because the people in the countryside need to actually earn a living. But that's a whole different can of worms that we're not really going to go into right now. So I have had that one before, and I have gotten in a bit of trouble for breaching that one before because I didn't stop at 10 o'clock, sorry, and I was still working later, and then I had a manager come out and tell me off big time. He was really not happy with me for doing that because it was causing them a whole load of headache later on, because I turned up and I was just working as a contractor on the place, but I didn't stop working at 10 o'clock, and he got very, very annoyed with me. It was sort of settled in the end, but yeah, I very nearly ended up being permanently removed from the estate for that little mishap. They claimed it was my ignorance because I'd only just got there. I didn't, and so that they basically said no, we didn't explain the rules properly, and left it at that. My boss did already explain the rules, and I had finished. But I was spending the night in the field, and I didn't want to just roll my sleeping bag out right where it was on the ground, because the ground was a bit uncomfortable, the stubble and everything, and it was also cold and the damp coming down. So what I was doing was I was using a loader a load-off telehandler to stack up several bales so that I could just make a little house. I was just putting up 3 stacks of bales. Actually, it's 4 stacks of bales. Let me go there. Press H on that one. No, I don't want the vehicle extension. I want to turn that off and open normal working. There, go like that. Right. We got 3 tractors working in the field with 3 weeders. Hopefully, we'll be able to do all of this field without losing our time on this. I'm really hoping this works out, these 3 weeders. So we've got 6 meters worth of weeder. It's still not very much weeder, to be honest. Only 6 meters worth. We could do with a little bit more than that. But I reckon this is going to be... This isn't too bad, especially if we've got the electric tractor working. And if we get really desperate, we could buy a 4th one. But I don't think we're going to need to do that. So yeah, what I was doing was I was putting 3 bales. I put 3 bales on the ground, then 2 bales right next to it, and this is the big square bales that we've got further down, the ones that we've got over there. 3 bales on the ground, 2 bales next to it, 3 bales next to that. Then over the top of that, putting a bale, a couple more bales, 3 bales across the end to tuck it in. So it's basically making myself a little house, and then 3 bales in front, put it at an angle, so that I had a little house to sleep in. And I was just putting the last bale on the top, on as my roof, when the manager turned up and started telling me off. And I didn't bother trying to explain. I just apologized, and then they spoke to the contractor, and they apologized as well and said it would never happen again. And of course it wouldn't, because by that time I'd built my house, and so I was able to stay there for the 4 days that I was working on the estate, and I'd already had my house. So it was all fine. But yeah, we weren't allowed to work past 10 o'clock on that estate. And there were other places I've worked that have had similar restrictions, but not across the entire estate. Certain fields they weren't allowed to work in past 7, 8 o'clock. I think it was 7 o'clock actually. There were some fields that were close to the village, and they weren't allowed to work those fields past 7 p.m. But it was only the ones that were up against the village. If there were houses against the fields, they weren't allowed to work that field past 7 p.m. They just had to plan their working so that they did those during the day, and then The other fields that they wanted to work later, the other fields they wanted to work, they would just make sure that they did them a bit later on in the day. So it just required a little bit of planning. So I've sort of seen it in a number of different places. So, there are quite a few reasons why you wouldn't be allowed to work past a set time. I'm just curious if there's other people who've experienced something similar. But, yeah, there are all sorts of reasons why it might. I'm thinking here, like, we've got 6 meters. We've got 6 meters of this running up and down the field, haven't we? We've got 6 meters of rake, of weeder, running up and down the field right now as we speak. There's 2 meters there. We've got 2 meters that we just seen, and then we've got another 2 meters over here. It's still pretty slow. 6 meters of it. Now, if we want to be able to catch these weeds just right, we're not always going to be able to catch the weeds, but I'm still thinking I like the idea of being able to get them when they're here. We've got one more tractor over there, so we can either go and use this tractor here for putting doing some fertilizer. We need to do some more fertilizer with this one, I think. Let's go back and check it. Do we? Yes, we do. We need to do more fertilizer. I don't think we're ready to do fertilizer here, but we need to go and fertilize the grass. So I think we won't worry about getting another weeder. We will instead get this one loaded up with fertilizer, and we will take it off up into the field at the top. Get that one loaded up. We've got one lot of fertilizer to do down the bottom, and I mean, I can find out if we're able to put fertilizer on this field. I don't think we are, but we can find out. Let me just go into here a second. No, it's not that one. There, that one needs to go back to, okay, back to the shop like that. That one's gone. Yeah, we can go and spread fertilizer on the grass over here. We can find out if this field is actually able to take fertilizer. I don't think it is, because we just done the planting. Right, no. We got to wait for a growth stage on there before we can do any more on that. But what I can do is I can go round this field and go and do the fertilizer spinning. So I'm going to bring you down here like this. And I'm going to do once around the field with the spinner myself, and then we will let the hired help carry on and finish this job. So bring you round like that. There we go. And we should be able to do a nice, quick, easy job across this field. It doesn't take that long for it to do all of this field. I mean, it's quite a big field, but then the fertilizer has got a nice wide spread on it, so it really doesn't take very long. By the time we get this done, then the weeders will have done another good slice. So whilst I'm thinking, yes, it would be nice to go and get another weeder and have 4 of them working in the field, we kind of need this one to be doing this fertilizer spreading anyway, so we'll prioritize doing this rather than doing the weeding. I don't think it's going to hurt. We do have herbicide as a backup if we really need it. At the moment, I'm preferring not to. I want to see if we can try and do this with the mechanical weeders at all, if we can make that work. Because it's not something that we've done in this series up until now. And I'm curious if it's even going to be possible for us to maintain using mechanical weeders for a number of crops. I mean, if we're strictly trying to do this organically, then those weeders are our only option. So if the weeds come late, you can't use weeders as a preventative treatment. So if the weeds come later than the first growth stage, you're not going to be able to do anything with them anyway. And then your crop has got to take a hit from the weeds that have come in. Now, that's kind of a bit like organic farming anyway. I mean, I've had people talking about organic farming before, and most of you have said that, generally speaking, it's not really worth the... It doesn't seem to be worth it anymore. You get fertilizers that you can use, and So you're not paying a load extra for the fertilizers and that, but because you are not able to use the herbicides and that you can with regular farming, you tend to lose quite a bit of your crop anyway to various weeds and diseases that are going to come along and hit the crop. And that's the bit that makes it not really worthwhile, because the price difference isn't quite so great as it used to be. And with that price difference, you've also got you're more susceptible to disease, you're more susceptible to weeds coming in and causing issues when you can't get into the field to do anything about them. I mean, you can a little bit, but you know, there's only so many weeds that you can deal with, and especially in large fields, you can spend weeks out in the fields pulling the weeds by hand, and some people do. But at the end of it, you're still left with a crop that hasn't performed as well as someone who's gone round and thrown on a load of herbicide, gotten rid of the weeds, and then they've got a much better yield at the end of it. And the price difference doesn't make up for the poor years. Now, some years you get a bumper crop. You know, everything sort of falls into place and you get a bumper crop from it. But the poor years don't make up for the bumper years. The bumper years don't make up for the poor years, I should say. And this was generally what people said in the comment section last time I was talking about organic farming. It's not all that easy when it comes to being the farmer that's trying to do the organic farming. It's definitely not quite as cut and dried as you would think, and it's definitely not got the profit margins that it maybe once had. It did used to sort of be like the in thing, and a lot of farmers were getting into organic farming, but it seems to be a lot less of it now. Certainly with arable farming, there seems to be a lot less. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but I get the impression that there is a lot less arable farming now that is organic than used to be. It sort of seems to be the case that stock farming, there's quite a lot of organic stock farming, but arable farming doesn't seem to have the profits required in order to make it worthwhile. So it's generally not done as much anymore, or just generally not seen to be worth it. So it's there's far fewer people that are doing it. Is that the case? I don't actually know. I've not really looked into the state of organic farming. I know from experience in the area that I live that there are quite a few stock farmers, but then it's mostly stock around where I live anyway. We struggle to grow grain because of the wet conditions here. It's like we don't have enough sunlight. We don't have enough bright sunshine hours to really make arable farming profitable. You can do arable farming, and arable farming is done, but there isn't enough hours of sunshine in order to really give you decent crops. You have a lot of issues with various different types of mold and things like that, all sorts of rain-related problems with arable crops. And stock farming, on the other hand, is ideal for stock farming because grass grows around here. There's one thing that we can grow, and that is grass, and lots of it. So stock farming is quite widely done. Most of the farming in this region is stock farming. Not all. Potatoes are grown a lot, but yeah, most of the farming is stock farming. And then there's arable sort of spread around into it as well. So you've got the different types of farming going on. But from what I've seen from things available locally, most of the organic is focused on the stock. Right? It's very easy to do organic stock farming where I'm from. Grass grows so well here that so long as you're not spreading artificial fertilizer on the grass, you've got a never-ending supply of food for your animals. You don't stuff them full of grain. Yes, they may not end up quite as fat as some, but by not stuffing them full of grain, you then slap an organic sticker on them and you get a bit more of a premium for the meat. And grass-fed, local grass-fed meat is quite a sale point around here as well. Most local butchers supply almost exclusively locally reared meat as well. So a lot of these they're already selling, and it's mostly organic anyway. Even the farmers that don't have organic stock, they're not buying in hundreds of tons of grain to stuff into animals that are kept in sheds. Right? I know that is how it happens in other parts of the world. It simply does not happen here. They keep the animals in the grass fields because it's free food that's coming out of the ground. And the farmers that do feed grain, they go and give them grain as a supplement alongside all of the grass that is coming out of the ground for free. And then the animals, you know, it's not classed as organic, so unless they're feeding them organic grain. But even then, it's the ones that are giving the corn supplements, the ones that are giving the grain as a bit of extra for their animals, even those, there's still the majority of the diet is still grain. It's not it's not grain. No, the majority of the diet is still grass. They're not the intensively reared animals that you see elsewhere. And don't get me wrong, I'm not under any illusion. There are plenty of quite intensively reared animals in other parts of the UK. It's just that here in the southwest of the UK, it's less frequent. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying it's a lot less frequent than it is in other parts of the country. And I don't know, that maybe that kind of like skews the numbers somewhat, but I see organic and organically grass reared. I see it all the time. I see a lot of the food available coming from this organic grass reared, where it's literally just the farmers will keep the livestock out in the fields until they reach the age that they're supposed to be slaughtered at, or they reach an appropriate weight, and then they round them up and send them off. It's fairly low maintenance, and that's the other attraction to it, is that it's not an intensive farming. It's much less intensive than so many other versions of farming, where you do have to be pouring in a whole load of extra feed and things like that. Right, what is this tractor going to do now? Usually what they do... Oh no, he is just going to do this little bit right here beside the stone. No. Okay. This is new. What are you doing? This is supposed to be the hired help, and I have absolutely no clue where that hired help is going. I'm gonna... Oh, I know what they're doing. I know what they're doing. Our electric tractor is still doing well. I know exactly what they're doing. They're going to the other end of the field. They're going up here. Right, I didn't really want you to do that, but anyway, I have run out of time for this particular episode, so what we're going to do is I'm going to bring this one over here. I'm going to start it again, and we will carry on doing this in tomorrow's episode, and we'll hopefully finish doing the weeding down there as well. Then we can skip the night and maybe look at selling some more of our produce that we've got. We'll worry about that then. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this episode, then please hit down below and give us a like. And if you really enjoyed it, then please tell your friends all about me. Get them to come and watch as well. That would be awesome. And until next time, thank you very much for watching. This is Frithgar. Goodbye, and see you later.